offshore, which is exactly what this government would like to do.
Let's move on. You said, are we in Soviet Russia? We're not. In fact, we're in Swindon, if you've just joined us, with a live politics show debate. Let's take our next question. It's from Mike Soper, who's an ex-military man, you can probably tell by his bearing, who's voted Labour in the past, but hasn't yet made up his mind for this election. Is that right? What's your question, please?
Correct. Thank you. Good afternoon. Can salaries of over £200,000 for council chiefs be justified? And if so, how? And would you consider capping those salaries?
£200,000? Do you think that's a reasonable amount to run a big local authority?
I think it's unreasonable, personally.
What would be reasonable?
Somewhere around half that.
OK. Right, let's take the Lib Dem view on this.
I'm with you on that, Mike.
How much do you think it's worth to run a local council?
Well, I'll tell you what it isn't worth. It isn't worth spending £50,000 on recruitment consultants simply to find the next chief executive of Wiltshire Council, which is what the Conservatives in my county did. We must have much more sense about value for money for the taxpayer in these high-end jobs in the public sector. We propose a cap on public sector pay rises of £400 per year, so that there is a cost of living rise for people on modest incomes in the public sector, but the people at the top don't get to these incredibly inflated salaries.
But that's happened on the Lib Dem councils as well, hasn't it?
I don't think you'll have seen anything like the money that's been spent on the redundancies in Wiltshire here. The Taxpayers Alliance produced a report two weeks ago in which they revealed that there was several employees of local councils in Wiltshire that were receiving the sort of payments you described in your question. One was paid over £250,000 in the last tax year. It's phenomenal, and it needn't have happened. It needn't have happened if Conservative councils had been more careful with our money.
Claire Perry, I mean, this is market forces, isn't it? I mean, it's supply and demand.
This is an out-of-control public sector. This is a public sector that is not subject to transparency. There is no requirement right now for councils or any public sector organisation to publish their salaries. And this is a core policy of ours. If you shine the light on these things, then essentially you get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people like you asking the questions.
So
and
what,
we also said
what should be the pay?
Well, what we said yesterday is that we should have a public sector pay multiplier. So the top person in an organisation can earn no more than 20 times the lowest paid person in that organisation. And I think that is a good direction of travel across the public sector. And it should apply not only to councils, but to the heads of the stuffed, bloated regional development agencies.
I mean, it's interesting that Somerset County Council, Conservative, had just appointed a chief executive at £160,000.
Well, look, but again, this is what a core part of our policy is, to push these decisions down. We think local councils should be far more powerful and far more accountable to the people that elect them in, rather than some unelected, unaccountable.
Well, I'm sorry, but that in Somerset, the money was set by the local authority. No one told Somerset County Council to pay £160,000 to their new chief executive. Well,
surely that's for the county council to decide what
they should pay. So you wouldn't cap it?
No, we would have a multiplier. What we've just said is this is a policy announcement that we've just said in the last week, that we think there should be a link. There should always be a link in the interest of fairness between the pay of the lowest paid person and the highest paid person.
Hang on a second, let me bring in the Labour point of view. I mean, is it reasonable to have caps on public sector pay?
I think there is an important point there, that public sector pay has, in certain areas, been seen to go too high. What's quite interesting, though, is if you look at what David Cameron's saying about the multiplier and having a factor from the lowest employee up to the chief executive, the new top man at M&S is coming in with a £15 million golden hello. Now, if you use the same multiplier, then your average person working in a supermarket will be on about £500,000 a year.
But taxpayers are not paying his salary.
Let me just bring in the audience. Sorry, anyone here earning around £200,000 a year? No? Less than that. I mean, does anyone here think it's right that councils should pay for the very best person, to bring the best person in? Hands down. This lady at the back, what are you saying?
I think that's the wrong question to ask. The thing that I find absolutely appalling is that the gap between the poorest paid and the highest paid has widened in the past 13 years. I didn't vote for Labour at the last election, but I did not expect that to happen under their stewardship. And I think it's outrageous, and it's not just about public sector.
There seems to be a disconnect, doesn't there, which has certainly happened under this government, from those at the bottom and those at the very top. How has that been allowed to happen? Is it anything to do with Peter Mandelson, do you think, saying that Labour is very, very content to have people who are filthy rich?
to be honest, speaking personally, and as a Labour man, I think that the inequality levels between pay are staggering. But what you will find is that the majority of that has been a huge increase at the top. What you've also got to remember is that the standard of living and the wages of people at the bottom has also increased significantly over the last 13 years. So, yes, there has been greater disparity, but a lot of that is to do with pay running away at the top rather than people suffering at the bottom. And I'm not terribly comfortable with some of the huge salaries commanded by people in various private companies. But also, I'm proud of the fact that through tax credits and through the way that we've channelled money into the poorest in our society, those people have been lifted out of poverty.
Claire Perry, let's just turn to you. I mean, do you make a differentiation between the public sector and the private sector? Is it all right for people in the private sector to earn whatever they want?
Well, I just want to get back to this fundamental question, though, which is that we've spent trillions of pounds under this government elected on such promises to eradicate inequality, and inequality is continuing to grow in this country.
But because the top people are earning more.
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily the case.
Tax people at the top.
This is a government that was pledging to eradicate inequality, and they have failed dismally. And a byproduct of that has been an enormous amount.
Sorry, Claire, do you think it's a bad thing that that inequality exists at this level?
Of course, I think it's an enormous problem.
So that
but
means,
I don't
isn't it,
think,
people at the top paying more tax?
But let's focus on what the original question was. Do I think taxpayers should be paying enormous fat cat salaries in the public sector? I think it is completely wrong, and that is where we have to start.
But moving on, you're very happy for people to pay more in the private sector, for salaries to be whatever they want.
I think the way that our market system works, I don't think we should be imposing pay caps. What I don't want, though, for example, is people who are in banks that are supported by the taxpayers and in the banking sector in general to continue to get multi-million-pound bonuses, and that is why I support the tax on bankers' bonuses, and I think it's the right thing to do.
OK, thank you very much indeed. I think we must move on. You can't get more urban than this shopping centre, just a few miles down the road. But we're into beautiful Wiltshire countryside, of course, and our next question is from Bob Husband, who's retired to the village of Cherrell. I think that's how you pronounce it. Where are you? Yes, what's your question, please?
Should your party be elected to government, what steps will be taken to ensure the continuity and improvement of rural communities?
Should your party be elected into government, what will you do to ensure the prosperity and continuity of rural communities, where you're a rural man? What do you think?
Well, it's vital that small communities still have access to the services they need. It's shocking the number of post offices that have been closed by this Labour government and the Conservative government before it. But I think it's important that public transport in rural areas ensures that people are still connected to where those services are. We propose to raid the major new road building budget so that we can invest we can invest that money in our railways. We want to make sure that we have local services serving the local market towns, not just the high-speed lines, which are the ones which government ministers seem excited about.
Let's just go back to our question. I mean, what do you see as the problem in rural areas? I mean, they all look rather nice to us townies.
There's a whole raft of problems. Affordable housing for young people.
Absolutely.
Decent and frequent public transport that operates in the evenings and weekends, not just during the commuter hours. Modern community facilities. Some of the village halls are ancient, and we need modern community facilities for modern communities, but small communities.
How do you think the Labour government has dealt with these issues?
Ignore them.
Ignored them. Have you?